at the news stories from Nigeria. This is an interactive conversation and we'll love to know what your thoughts are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 981. You can also tweet at Smooth 981. And we can also catch the live stream on YouTube. Just search for Smooth 981 and you can catch the stream or even post the comments on there. My analysts this morning, Gbubemi and Joseph. Good morning.
Good morning, Zibby.
Good morning, lady.
Good morning, Lagos.
All right.
Lagos.
So it's 2 weeks and a day to go to the general elections. Just a reminder. Okay, so let's start off with the nation. Now, there are indications that the integrity group of the PDP, also called the G5, will disclose their stance on a presidential candidate just a few hours before the 25th of February election day. Now, River State Governor Nyesom Wike has failed to publicly endorse any of the presidential candidates. And if you recall, he did say there would be an endorsement in January. And there are also certain indications that there might be a bit of a split among the G5.
Okay, just for those who don't know, just a bit of background. So the G5 governors are the remaining PDP governors within the country. And one would normally expect that they would have queued behind their presidential candidate, Atiku Abubakar. But for circumstances relating to the zoning of the presidency, so you know how there was this unofficial arrangement where power would rotate from the north to the south. Well, PDP didn't follow that, and that's why we're here today. So largely championed by Wike, in my opinion, the governors have just refused to choose a candidate, probably to try and encourage a lot of wheeling and dealing, because I'm sure that's what's happening right now. Although Governor Autumn of Benue has already chosen Peter Obi, the other four governors, have failed to choose someone. In my opinion, right up until whenever they endorse whichever candidate it is that they choose to endorse, it does tell us a bit about the party. So these problems didn't really start with this, with the failure to cede the presidency to the south, as it should have been. If we look back at the PDP during most of the APC's administration, they have been weakening down, so to speak. They haven't been as vibrant as they were before. A lot of their members have cross-carpeted to the APC as well. So this is, in my opinion, it's just more like it's more like a reflection of the problems that have been ongoing ever since. It would be interesting to find out which candidate that they eventually end up endorsing. And obviously, their endorsement would reveal who they believe, will win, quote unquote. But I'm sure what's happening right now is probably they're trying to snag a bit of deals with whichever of their preferred candidates it is. I'm almost certain that they know who it is they want to endorse by now, but they are trying not to rock the boat as much as possible. But I also wonder how much weight their endorsements would carry. Obviously, it's unlikely that they will present one unified candidate by the election day. I'm sure, they'll be split amongst the three main candidates. So it will be interesting to see who they eventually do, each of the governors eventually does endorse.
All right, well, let us know what your thoughts are. The WhatsApp number is 0809 444 981. And we're moving on to Vanguard. The Trade Union Congress of Nigeria has assured its members and the working people that it would defend and protect their interests as the country continues to struggle with the Naira and petrol crisis. Now, the president of the TUC gave the assurance in a statement on Thursday, and they did empathize with Nigerians in that statement, and they're urging all affiliate unions, state councils, civil societies, traders, students, and everyone else, including religious leaders, to be on alert.
It's a very helpful statement to appeal to Nigerians who at this moment are going through real trouble in terms of securing petrol, and also to have cash in their pockets to be able to carry on their living. The stage at which we are now requires that leaders are able to pacify the people as much as possible. We've seen riots breaking out in Ogun and other places in Ondo and places like that. People attacking banks and all that. The truth is that as much as we're angry and disappointed, creating more havoc and destruction won't help anybody. So it is important that leaders are able to calm frayed nerves and ensure that people understand that some sacrifice, there's no how we're going to do this that may not be because we've not laid the foundation to actually achieve a seamless, a cashless economy. It takes time. You have to have the infrastructure to build on to be able to achieve cashless economy as the CBN intended. There are many failures can be attributed to the central bank in terms of not educating people properly. I mean, take the Naira, for example. Many Nigerians don't know what it means, and if people have created Naira wallets and they can transact businesses easily, I'm sure that much of the stress that we are talking about would have been relieved. But because that fallback isn't there, everybody still depends on cash, and it's putting a lot of pressure on everybody now because the cash isn't available. The banks are squeezed. And we don't know where the fault lies. The central bank says they disbursed enough money, they blame the banks. So every average citizen sees the bank as the enemy now. And that's dangerous. So appeals of this nature are helpful, and we hope that everything is being done as government keeps assuring that these situations will ease off, especially as we get closer to the election day.
Right, I've got a message, and this is Dami from Ketu. Dami says the division in the PDP will be child's play compared to what is coming for the APC, regardless of the outcome of the elections. Let's move on to Punch. The Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, has condemned the directive of the National Universities Commission to shut Nigerian universities to enable students participate in the forthcoming general elections. The NUC gave this directive in a letter on Tuesday addressed to vice chancellors of all universities and directors of inter-university centers.
Shutting down the universities during elections is really not something new. I remember when I was in university and there was an election, it was shut down for, I think, the period of the elections, and we had to go home. I recall that we had discussed a couple of weeks ago about what we felt would be the reasons and the impact of this decision. As it is now, recall that students are already far back in the academic calendar, so this is like a 3-week push back in the academics. What I would have felt would have been a better decision, would sort of like a partial closure, because there are people who registered at home, and would want to go back home to vote. That would have been nice, so they could go back. And then those who are registered on campus would be able to vote on campus as well. It's interesting also that the NUC decided to take on this charge, because usually the closure of the universities would be left to the Senate of the institution to handle. And if we recall, many of the vice chancellors are typically returning officers for the states. So that's also one of the reasons, because the academia is also involved in the election process. So I'm wondering what also happens to the polytechnics, the colleges of education. As it is now, we haven't heard any word on that. If we also recall, for example, the Lagos state government has declared midterm for students, I think from sometime about a few days before the election, the presidential elections, to just after the governorship election. So it's looking like many of the schools across all the levels will be shut during that period. Some people have also cited security reasons. I'm not sure what reports may have been heard, but if we consider that as well, it might be a good decision. But one thing I would have also wished is, because institutions know that this is going to happen, and this is 2023, it has always happened. if by now universities had transited to some form of online learning, so that academics wouldn't have to necessarily stop just because elections were going on. Students could have learned from home during the 2.5 week period so that their academics could continue.
Right. Let's go on to our WhatsApp messages. Jen Itse says, out of curiosity, why must we vote where we are registered? Is it because votes are not electronic? I do believe INEC had a system where people could actually transfer their PVCs before the deadline. And some people actually did do that. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like most did. But I'm curious about this. Students have been out of school for so long. I think it's difficult being a Nigerian student because there's just so many uncertainties.
Exactly. And you can't plan, really.
Yeah.
Lady Rose says, please, my opinion concerning Wike and the G5 endorsements is that we all know it is all undemocratic. I think we shouldn't hype this all the time. Okay. Thank you for your message, Lady Rose. But if it's in the news, we will talk about it. All right, let's move on to our next story. And this one comes from this day. President Muhammadu Buhari has approved the establishment of a Presidential Transition Council for facilitating and managing the 2023 transition program. Now, a statement from the office of the Secretary to the Government of the Federation would be chaired by the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa. So let's just go straight into this story.
Yeah, I mean, setting up the Presidential Transition Council is basically a perfunctory thing because the president is expected to do it. He's leaving office in May and we hand over power to another administration. So it's perfunctory. But the important thing is that it just re-emphasizes or re-echoes his pledge that is always made, that he is interested in ensuring that he conducts a free and fair election. So doing this is more or less like reinforcing that statement he keeps making that he intends to hand over power to the next, whoever wins the election, and he will conduct a free and fair election. But most importantly, at this moment when people are alleging plots to scuttle the election, cancel it, and all that, this message is very important. The president is more or less saying, look, I am willing to give power to whoever wins the election. And as I keep saying, I am going to conduct a free and fair election. So it remains for us to see this whole thing happen. And it's important that every Nigeria plays his or her role in ensuring that this happens. And we pray that it's all peaceful and then a transition can actually happen from one democratic government to another. And that rumors of fifth columnists, those trying to sabotage our democracy, those things are not really true. It's very, very important that Nigeria is not pushed into any form of chaos. And the reassurance by INEC that they are prepared to conduct the election on the date already given is very reassuring. And all this just adds to the, adds Philip to that, decision or the effort they are making.
All right, let's take a quick break. And when we return, we'll continue the conversation on Freshly Pressed. Again, the WhatsApp number is 0809 444 0981. You can also catch the live stream on YouTube. Just search for Smooth 981.
First bag.
You first bag. Oh, wow.
I always like that part.
It's a very catchy thing, actually.
You and love as you flow through. My music is frequency. Love music, love life. You're listening to my news.
So we'll be back on in about a minute 30.
Sorry?
We're back on in a minute 30.
Okay.
I don't know, this whole ASU, sorry, not ASU, but the shutting down of the tech.
What'd you say?
No, I just remember that was live. So.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Well, I think in a way it's okay, because the young people wanted it.
But they could have transferred their PVCs. And then for those, if they had made, like just like Gbubemi said, prior plans, alternate plans, then people who registered at unis could have also had the option to transfer or not. Because
Yeah, but you know the challenge is, as of last year, they probably wouldn't have known what the calendar would have been.
Yeah. The universities were short. A whole lot of that. There's a lot of uncertainty in our academic calendar in the public sector. So it's challenging for those.
so bad for them.
Yeah, you know, it's just so sad that they are losing time again, and I mean, it's just so disheartening.
COVID, yeah, it's just too much.
This is Miss Eva Johnson, and don't you touch that dial.
Smooth 98.1. This is Freshly Pressed, and we are looking at the stories making the headlines here in Nigeria. It's Zibby, and I have my two analysts with me this morning, Gbubemi and Joseph. All right. So just before the break, we were speaking about the directive to shut down universities for the duration of the elections. But let's move on to the next one. And this comes from Punch. The Independent National Electoral Commission has solicited the support of the Nigerian Bar Association in handling its numerous pre-electoral cases in courts across the country. Now, he said as of the 6th of February, INEC had been joined in 1,241 intra-party lawsuits in different courts of law, not on elections conducted by INEC, but on primaries conducted by the political parties for the nomination of candidates for the 2023 election.
It's interesting that many of these cases, he said, have nothing to do with elections conducted by INEC, but they're primary elections conducted by the political parties. And according to the reports, but each time they go to court, they join the commission, and we have to engage either our own in-house lawyers, or we transfer the cases out to external legal firms to represent the commission. Out of these 1,241 cases, over 300 are right now before the Court of Appeal, and 155 before the Supreme Court as at Monday this week. So obviously they don't have the capacity to be able to, they don't have enough staff to be able to attend to all of these cases. I think it's a welcome call, especially since they've asked for it as a pro bono service, because obviously there's no way the country is going to be able to pay for all of this. I would also, I hope that the NBA would be willing to consider this and engage their members to be able to provide this as pro bono and probably file it under corporate social responsibility or something like that. But it's really a welcome call. I think it's also important that INEC should spend time educating the political parties, because what they've said is that these primary elections, they have nothing to do with it. So if political parties constantly keep joining them in such suits, it's going to be a distraction for INEC. So they need to be able to educate the political parties about the futility in joining them in those suits, since they have absolutely nothing to do directly with the process, because I know that INEC usually would be an observer in this process.
Let's look at a few messages coming through. Idima Puza says, who are we to obey? The CBN deadline date or the Supreme Court judgment? There is still no Naira to spend. And Ayaba says, the intention of the CBN is that we use less cash. Emefiele's message is go cashless. It is not go and look for new Naira. New Naira is still cash. Get e-wallets, e-Naira, POS machines, prepaid cards, and so on. Transact without cash. Instead, use transfers. All right. And Tayo says the president is already making solid plans to leave office. But the question is, who is taking over? Let's move on to Premium Times. The National Security Advisor, Babagana Monguno, says the policy of the CBN on the Naira may affect military personnel deployed to remote locations. And he stated this yesterday during an interactive session with the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee on the Currency Redesign and Naira Swap Policy. Now, he says globally, military operations, even in first world countries, such policies, if not properly well thought out, will affect some. And he goes on to say that certain soldiers are deployed to areas where they cannot actually access digital means of paying for daily subsistence.
I think it's very unfortunate that public officers just decide to lash out at the central bank that is doing its duty. And the central bank has made it clear that there will be waivers where cash is necessary for operations or certain activities. And this government security agency, there are certain things you don't even say that are not even, that you don't say in the public, because somehow this relates to military operations, the operational philosophy of the military and so on. So yeah, there are challenges. Some soldiers will need to have cash. Arrange that quietly. Get the central bank to provide the cash for you to do your business. And they can do it. They did it for INEC. They can do it for essential services. They can make exceptions. So coming out and sounding as if, oh, that this policy is crippling our business and oh God, which everybody is doing, it's unfair. I think that as a country, we need to move forward. Going cashless is something it's the times in which we live. So we have to brace up for it. The military can devise other means of getting their soldiers funds to their soldiers to be able to live and carry on subsistence on the battlefield without coming to the public to say, oh, there's this policy is going to impact military operations. We have known our military to use cash. And if they need cash, the cash could be provided. So I think most of these things are just being politicized and dramatized in some cases, as this one is. I don't think it was necessary to say all of this. All you say is that we are going to liaise with the central bank to provide funds for us to be able to carry out operations. I'm sure that they didn't go to the CBN like INEC did to say, oh, we're having this challenge. How can we resolve it? It can be done without coming public. This is national security, for goodness sake. So sometimes I don't know how we sentimentalize things and just get emotional and maybe you play to the gallery. Everybody is whipping the central bank, so let me join and also flog them,
All right. Tayo says INEC has to be joined as a party in most of these suits because they would publish the final list of candidates for elections. They can't be easily excused. Shegun says, is it okay for the CBN to blame banks for the currency shortage? Let's look at what's coming through from Vanguard. Now, the federal government says plans are ongoing to incorporate the websites of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and those of all foreign missions into a unified portal. Now, they say that the management of the unified web portal was proposed to be handled under a public-private partnership model. And this portal, among other things, is aimed at providing a platform for stranded Nigerians to reach out and get assistance.
I think this is long overdue. If you've ever tried to, for example, maybe get a passport abroad, you know how confusing it is. I remember once I had to get when I was abroad, and there were literally 2 different websites, and I didn't know how to navigate. I had to get a friend to write down a step-by-step process for how to get that. And I ended up finding out that there was a different process in another country. So I think this is long overdue. Clarity is very important, and that's one thing that the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs, has been a bit weak on. My thoughts regarding this public-private partnership is what exactly the private sector would be getting out of it, because obviously there has to be some sort of profitability for them, except the call would be to provide services like the nature of a CSR project or something. I'm not quite sure I see exactly how the private sector stands to benefit, except it's in some sort of a CSR project. And then also moving on to the need for the harmonization, it's also important that people should be able to access just one government website, Nigerians outside of Nigeria, and be able to navigate their way through whatever issues they have, irrespective of whatever country or territory it is that they're in. But far and above this, I think also that whatever happens with this website, it needs to be a responsive website, because there have been calls previously of people who've said, oh, you know, we've called the numbers on the website, nobody picked. We sent an email, nobody picked. You know, it's 2023. I think that the website needs to also be very, very responsive with active customer service agents 24/7, and not just active in terms of responding to queries online, you know, but also in terms of seeing action. A lot of Nigerians have not enjoyed the best of the federal government while abroad. I think that if this is properly done, rather, it will go towards assuaging calming the nerves of a lot of Nigerians as well, who've had, you know, unpleasant experiences outside of the country.
All right, and from The Guardian, the World Health Organization says Africa is witnessing an exponential rise in cholera cases amidst a global surge. 26,000 cases and 660 fatalities have been reported as of the 29th of January in Africa. And in 2022, about 80,000 cases and about 1,800 deaths were recorded from 15 nations.
Well, it is sad because cholera is actually, to a large extent, a disease of poverty, because where you don't have safe water, safe access to safe water, the possible outbreak of cholera will occur. It's a matter of sanitation, and water is critical to sanitation and health and well-being of the human being. So it's a failure of African leaders that certain things that should be basic still remain a challenge to the average African. We have over 1.3 billion people on the African continent, and yet we have less than 50% of that number can boast of access to good water, potable water. I mean, there are many cities in Nigeria where we don't have public recirculated water supply. You can't turn on the tap in your house as if taken for granted and have running water. You have to drill your borehole, you have to provide for yourself and all that. So these are things that are taken for granted in other parts of the world where leaders pay attention to the well-being of their people. But it's important to also give credit to countries like Nigeria. The Nigerian government has been trying to contain outbreaks of cholera here and there, but there's a lot of pressure on government to be able to meet this detection and then intervention to be able to block out the disease and save more lives. It's a challenge. We are lucky that we have support from the world agencies that come to the aid of government. Otherwise, it could have been really worse. But on the whole, leaders have to rise up to the occasion.
Okay, Jane Itse says going cashless means everything is working well. You have internet, your bank apps are functioning, and everything that should foster a cashless economy is in place. Gab says the CBN should get all stakeholders involved. USSD banking is still a solution. Telcos can reduce or remove charges for mobile banking. Charge commercial banks to improve uptime on USSD banking. Michael says we don't need to rant about the cashless policy. Rather, we should cry and fight for the unnecessary bank charges that will affect the masses. Our problem with carry cash about syndrome needs to stop. And that is all the time that we have for Freshly Pressed this morning. Thank you so much, Gbubemi, and thank you, Joseph, for being with us this morning.
Thank you, Zibby. That's so lovely. Thank you very much.
Do stay with us. There's a lot more to come on The Smooth Breakfast.